Ex-Chicago rug kingpin tied to Shinola Bartel says he forgives man who snatched his twin brother. Margarito J. Flores Jr. tells the Sun-Times he and his brother Pedro Flores, who helped bring down the Shinola Bartel Brocane King El Pocha, back Saul Rodriguez's bid to be released early from prison, even though Rodriguez abducted his brother in 2003. Now this says JNP. I didn't notice that, right? I haven't had a chance to talk to P about this. We've had the pleasure to have this conversation with Jay. And Jay told you guys that he reached out to Saul and they spoke. And it was a good conversation. We never really talked about it again, and it's probably something that we're going to get to now, especially after having this conversation with y'all right now. We didn't talk about its effects on P and what P thinks about that. P stays quiet. I get that. It feels like he was affected a lot harder from the entire experience. And understand something. You guys got to understand something too. First of all, they're two different characters. For sure. Just in who they are as people. One of them likes to sit back more and the other one likes to be out front more. You know? That's just a truth and a testament to their personalities. To their separate personalities. P's been extremely forthcoming with information, with his interviews here, and he talked his shit. He hasn't been on in a while, but y'all gotta understand something. When these guys started coming on the channel, their wives were getting sent to prison. A lot of responsibility comes with that, especially being guys that have businesses and guys that have jobs and families. You add P's already backseat personality with the extenuating circumstances, you get a guy that doesn't want to talk much. One man, Margarito J. Flores Jr., rose to the top of the rug trafficking world, going from flipping burgers at a McDonald's in Little Village to becoming the trusted top customer of Mexico's Shinola Bartel kingpin, Joaquin El Pocha Guzman Loera. The other man, Saul Rodriguez, ran a robbery and snatching ring in Chicago and the suburbs in cahoots with a crooked cop. Their paths crossed in 2003 when Rodriguez abducted Flores' twin brother Pedro Flores, his partner in overseeing the biggest rug dealing outfit in Chicago history. To win his brother's freedom, Margarito Flores paid Rodriguez a ransom of brocane. Flores estimates the value of the rugs was more than $2.4 million. Now, in an extraordinary turn of events, Flores says he has contacted Rodriguez in prison to let him know all is forgiven. The Flores twins, who helped bring down El Pocha after being caught by the feds, are backing Rodriguez's bids. So it says here both of them. The Flores twins, who helped bring down El Pocha after being caught by the feds, are backing Rodriguez's bid under the federal First Step Act for an early release from his 40-year prison term. Now that's a development. That's a new development. That's something we didn't know about. That the Flores twins have actually reached out to the judge. We knew that Jay had spoken to Saul. That we knew. But that's a new development. That they're backing Saul's bid to get out. Here's a quote. He has expressed his commitment to working with me and spreading the message of change, redemption, and deterrence, Margarito Flores wrote to the federal judge who sent Rodriguez away. If I recall, the federal judge is the same federal judge that got that dirty cop, Llewellyn, off early from his sentence because he was in danger of catching COVID. That don't sit right with me. I know it ain't my life, but I know they are plugged with the government. And Saul didn't just get at them, but so many people he hurt, well, he was crying like a punk. How plugged are they with the government, though? I mean, they're plugged, but how plugged are we talking here? You know what I mean? They plugged, they can get what they want. If that was the case, they would have used that shit for their wives. I mean, how much different is it compared to what the twins were doing? What do you mean? You mean his thing? He was the robber, he was the thief, and they were the rug dealers? It just seems more hands-on when you're trying to snatch people and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Than rug dealing. It's dirtier. You know, that thievery and bullshit. But let's say, you think so? Same outcome. No? Hurting people in one way or the other hurting people in one way or the other. It's a different situation, Velez, when you selling dope to somebody whose face you don't see, and then somebody snatch your loved one up and got them in the basement. Like, you don't see a difference there? Saul is a true monster. He'd work with the dirty cop and snatch rug dealers for their rugs, money or both. But he'd allegedly do it to his friends as well, and even had the audacity to show up to funerals crying his eyes out, and then when he got caught was asking the judge for leniency, the family, and crying his eyes out. The family testified that the way he was crying in court was at the funerals. There you go. I feel there's a character difference, Velez. You don't think there would be a character difference between the twins and Saul? The twins is an unfair measuring mark because they're different from most people in their positions. The lack of bodies, they ain't got bodies, all that. So their character is different than most. I think there's a character difference between them and Saul. They did what they did in order to get money, so I don't see the difference. I think there's a difference between a dude that sells dope and a dude that puts a bunch of women in the back of a box truck and traffics them across the desert. Isn't there a difference there? They do that for money. There's a difference between a hitman and somebody that sells some dope. I don't know how there could be a character difference, but no difference as long as money's exchanged. In my humble opinion, the twins went about their business without using violence as much as possible. Saul decided to make money by any means necessary. All right, let's get back to that article. So that's Jay saying he has expressed his commitment to working with me being Jay Flores, and spreading the message of change, redemption, and deterrence. Margarito Flores wrote to federal judge who sent Rodriguez away. Flores, 43, is a free man, like his brother, after getting a break on their prison time for agreeing to help make the case and testify against El Pocho, who's serving a life sentence in Colorado. The twins served 14-year sentences, 12 and a half, no? For smuggling tons of cocaine into the United States over a span of years. The Flores brothers' wives both went to prison for hiding and spending some of the ill-gotten proceeds from their husbands' rug empire. The women who wrote about their lives in the 2017 book Cartel Wives recently were released from prison. And that I can confirm as a fact, y'all. The wives are out of prison, released from prison. The prison system knows how to keep you tethered to their system in many ways. But the wives are free, y'all. And they chomping at the bit to come on here and talk to y'all. All right? And they said they didn't snitch. They ain't no snitches. I told them if they had the smallest amount of dirt on their husbands, they could have got some little, some little good time. But, they weren't going. The women who wrote about their lives in the 2017 book Cartel Wives recently were released from prison. There's your boy right there. I believe Saul came into our chat one day. He might have used his full name. Y'all know me. I don't take the bait right away. I don't take the bait right away because the bait could be just that, bait, bullshit, right? And that day he said something before he left. He said something to the effects of the forgotten prisoner or something. And he dipped off in the chat. I don't know if he thought we was going to recognize him right away and be like, hey, what's up? Rodriguez, 49, who's doing his time at federal prison in Minnesota, has served 16 years of his 14-year sentence. He was convicted of leading a snatching crew that, according to prosecutors, was involved in at least 3 unalivings. But he got bodies and shit. Velez said, I remember that day. You could tell in your face he had your wheels turning when you read that. Yeah. First of all, I ain't remembering everybody's last name. It's too many last names, too many syllables, too many towns in Mexico for me to remember. That's number one. Number two is when it dawned on me he was in here. I was like, how do I frame that? I think I asked him, is it him? But he bounced after that. He was gone. But the wheels were definitely spinning in my head because he was going to become the content at that moment. I don't know if he knew that or what. But I was about to start asking questions. It's like, bro, you forgotten? Who forgot you? Who's left when you do that shit to everybody around you? I thought there was irony in the being forgotten. It reminded me of Thirsty LaBarbie on Foot Chase. What do people expect when you burn everybody? I get it, empathy. A lot of people have more than I do. Yo, if he gets out, would you try to get him on here? Yeah. I'd ask the same question I'm asking now. Like, It's one thing to forgive. They better than me. Could have stood his ass in there. The level of things he did, the thoughts of snatching up one of the wives and all of that shit. I get it. They're different men. They're going down their own path of redemption, their own path spiritually. You know, they all are. Rodriguez, who made a deal and cooperated with prosecutors, told them he thought money that he paid to 2 lawyers was used to bribe then Alderman Edward Burke to approve the zoning to build homes. Burke, now in prison on an unrelated corruption conviction, has said in response that all he did was approve the project to beautify his Southwest Side ward. So one of the people that Saul talked on was a politician, which was Burke, notorious politician here. Rodriguez is now asking U.S. District Judge Joan Gottschall, didn't get nobody, because when she got her friend Llewellyn, who was basically Saul's cop connect and his partner in his ring, when they got him, Joan Gottschall let him out right away because he might get the vid. This was during the pandemic, but she let him out. And I was like, oh, you didn't get nobody, Gottschall. That's your name, Gottschall? Nah, you didn't get nobody. Now Rodriguez, Saul, was asking the same district judge, Joan Gottschall, to let him out of prison early under the Federal First Step Act, which President Donald Trump signed into law in his first term with bipartisan support. The 2018 law allows people convicted under previous federal rug laws to seek a compassionate early release from prison. He and Flores have made public statements that they had religious conversions behind bars. Both Saul and Flores, I guess he's saying Jay, have made public statements that they had religious conversions behind bars. It happens. Sometimes it sticks. Sometimes it doesn't. In Flores' letter to the judge, he wrote, I felt true freedom when I gave my life to Jesus Christ. Through his organization, Kingpin to Educator, Flores now offers seminars to law enforcement officials about rug trafficking and how to combat it. He also speaks at universities, churches, and juvenile detention centers. In his letter, he told the judge, I have worked with Congress to address issues such as cartel influence and border safety. In an emailed response to questions from the Chicago Sun-Times, Flores expanded on his thoughts about life after prison, saying, I'm grateful for the law enforcement and agencies who've supported me along the way. Not everyone is open to my training. There's still pushback, and some doors get shut. But the ones who are willing to utilize my knowledge and experience have made all the difference. Of Rodriguez, Flores says, although Saul caused real harm, not just to me and my brother, but to my wife and family, we never operated out of hate. Forgiveness wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a process rooted in accountability, healing, and growth. Flores says he's not in federal witness protection program. This is what Jay Flores says to the Sun-Times. Flores says he's not in a federal witness protection program. In fact, I travel the country working side by side with law enforcement officers as a consultant and educator, he says. Well, there's the answer for everybody that asked that question. At Rodriguez's sentencing in 2015, he told Gottschall he, too, had found God in jail and wanted to become an ordained minister behind bars. Sobbing, he told the judge, I don't want to do bad no more. In his first step petition filed Tuesday, Rodriguez said he became a doctor of ministry last summer. Whatever the fuck that is. He also presented a letter from a correctional officer who wrote that Rodriguez is a changed man. Another prison official said Rodriguez would be a perfect inmate to reconsider to be released from prison. According to Margarito Flores' letter, his story, like mine, could be used as a powerful tool to prevent others from following a destructive path. That I believe. I believe I could involve Mr. Rodriguez in some of the programs I lead, where his testimony and life experience could be a powerful tool to inspire and deter others. In Rodriguez's petition for early release, his lawyer, Jeffrey Steinbach, said Rodriguez suffers from ailments that would be better addressed outside of prison. Oh, look at this fat fucking hippo, rhinoceros, fucking walrus. That's what he is, the walrus. Glenn Llewellyn, a former Chicago cop who elevated Rodriguez from a rug informant to a partner in crime, was convicted in the same trial in 2020. In the same trial. In 2020, Llewellyn got a compassionate, they're so compassionate. A compassionate release under the First Step Act because he said he was at risk of contracting the coronita. Prosecutors had opposed the crooked cop's release, saying he had been the CEO and guardian angel of the crew. Bagacha said he rehabilitated himself personally and spiritually. That lady should be taken off the bench. That lady should go somewhere where she don't have people's fates in their hand. He rehabilitated himself personally and spiritually. We got a lot of new information out of this, all right? I don't think I'd put my hands in the fire for someone that snatched a family member of mine. Yeah, man. Takes a different fucking, I don't think so either. I don't think I could either. I wonder if Saul feels like anybody owes him anything. Because we know for damn sure the twins ain't got to do this. They ain't got to do nothing to hurt him. They just ain't got to do nothing to help him. They're not obligated to help this guy. This guy was nothing but a detriment to their business and their family. And the ones around them. Let's not forget people. The older lady that he had snatched. I think she had a business or a bar or something. The people around him who knew he was the guy with the bread to call him, and it was some dirty shit. I don't know how he expects somebody to be around for him. If he has that expectation, then to me there's a lack of humility there. If you're expecting it like, yeah, you should do this for me. Why? Because nobody else will? Why won't nobody else do it? What did you do to everybody, bro? You burn all your bridges? Shout out Velez, I wouldn't have done it. No te ayudo, pero tampoco te perjudico. Alright, he won't persecute you, but he won't help you. That was kind of my thought on it. All I had to do is turn my head. I ain't talked to him. And let's just say let's say he was a friend of mine and I had conversations with him. Friend or foe, I could have a regular conversation and still have my radar up listening for bullshit. Listening for character flaws. Listening for a lack of humility if there is a lack of humility. Listening for the jux, the trick, the fool. You trying to fool me? Now, the twins are not stupid men. Not easy to fool. And Jay's had conversations with the man. So maybe he hears something that I don't hear. But I don't know that I'm vouching for somebody on record that I don't know if he's changed. Shout out Zoraida. I want to be like the twins one day and be able to forgive like they did with Saul. I know I couldn't. Yeah. That's a character thing, huh? Or they bullshitting too. I like to think the twins are genuine with the things they say and do. If they weren't, they'd be out there doing worse things than they've been doing. Or doing bad things in general. They didn't have to do this. But it's a character thing. It's them on their mission towards redemption and taking out all the bullshit. And saying, yeah, I'm able to forgive him. And I get it. Forgive him. Cool. And you know what we say sometimes? We say, I'm not forgiving him for him. I'm forgiving him for me. Right? That's the selfish thing that we do as humans. I do it too. I'm not forgiving you for you, papas. I'm forgiving you for me. Right? They did the double side of that coin. They forgave him for themselves, and then they did something for him. They forgave him for him. That's different. I ain't got it. I ain't got it. And I'm older than them, and I ain't got it. Maybe I'll never have it. I'm going to call a spade, and I'm going to put everybody in their proper position. Very distant from me. Would that tarnish their reputation with the government if he's let out and does something? I wouldn't take their word for it no more. I wouldn't take them their judge of character anymore. I wouldn't take them, and people make mistakes. And you're going to make mistakes if you're on a forgiving mission. You're going to make mistakes. But if I'm the judge, I'm saying, Papa, you say this shit about everybody. Look what dude did. But we don't know that to be the case yet. Yeah, genuine guys. El sol no se puede tapar con un dedo. But I don't know that I had that character to, all right, cool, dude, I forgive you. And I don't even know if that shit, I could say it with my mouth. I don't know how, what's the word? How genuine that shit is in my heart. And it alludes that they both did it here, but it seems like P didn't have any comment on the subject. They allude to the both of them reaching out, right? But again, P keep his shit to himself, and when he don't, he bring it here. Wouldn't want to let out a person I have to be keeping my guard up for, draining. Yeah, but how much? Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing: if he got out, cool. You got out on your own, Papas. I didn't help you get out of here. You know? Are you a changed person? You a changed person? We'll see. We'll see if they let him out. All right? They probably shouldn't come check out this video. He'd probably be mad about it. But our opinions are opinion, Papa, and your deeds are your deeds, and they're what you did, and that's it. I'm gonna talk about it. Al que no le gusta,
no mames, wait.
I'm in your fucking boat.
I'm in your bubble. I'm in your bubble.
I just feel like people are willing to do whatever to get out of prison. Some people more than others. That's what I'm saying. El sol no se tapa con un dedo. They could have forgiven him, but they didn't have anything. They didn't have to do anything to help him. Absolutely not. Again, that's the double side of the coin. They forgave him for themselves, and they forgave him for him as well. It benefited him as well. If you're a changed person, show us, but on your own. Right. Figure it out on your own. Get out on your own. If I see you a changed person, maybe we'll talk and I'll put you on one of my, jump offs. Boom, there he is, upper echelon. They want answers. Val is doing great, looking as amazing as always. She looks like she's aging backwards, to be honest. Upper echelon, you take the link, you better find the Chicago hat, and we want a whole visual since you ain't in witness protection, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. And if he got a black eye, that's more proof that the wives are f***ing home.
All right, chat. Well, thanks again, bro, for having me. And big shouts out to everyone in the chat. The first thing I want to say is that, yeah, man, thank God that the girls are almost home. We're excited to, almost be home.
Again, everybody's wishing Viv her happy birthday. Tomorrow's her birthday.
Oh, yeah, tomorrow's her birthday, yeah, to my sister-in-law. Big shouts out. I think she's like, it's weird because, there's so many people probably want, like they're in our lives and stuff like that. And how you became like family to us too as well, where it's like, oh, you got to say what's up to Shy,
Right. Salute.
It's good, she's in good spirits, and hopefully I'm step closer to putting this behind us.
I want to get your thoughts on this thing.
You know what? I didn't think it was gonna be public on this article. Be honest, I haven't really read the article. I glanced through it.
What didn't you think was going public?
Well, the fact that I wrote a letter to the judge, to be honest. And I think that the way it's reported, again, right? It's reported almost in a way where it's like numbness, right? I think the letter speaks for itself. Like I'm not, I'm giving my perspective, on how I've overcame and and how I'm working towards redemption. And I do believe that change is possible. And in anyone, I'm not, my faith tells me that anyone could change, right? I'm not like suggesting that he should be released because of me. I'm just saying, I'm a good example of someone being able to change, and I don't put a scale on crimes, right? And of course, all of us are like, yeah, you're not comparable, right, to some of the stuff he's done. But that's not up to me to decide, And I think the way the newspaper kind of like put it out, it was almost like we're in the same circle, we're in the same boat, and I'm vouching for another dude like me. Nah, that's not the way the letter was written. And I know it's hard for a lot of people to understand that. I'm gonna tell you, I got a lot of complaints from law enforcement, especially from a lot of attorneys and people like that. Like, how could you? He's this, he's that. And I look at it like we're not perfect, and that's not for me to decide. I do believe in second chances. I don't carry any hate. I think we talked about this. When I wrote the email back to Frank Main, who was the person who wrote the article from Chicago Sun-Times, right? Is that the same person that made, could forgive or wrote the letter, the same person that was at the top of the drug trade at one time, Like, we don't change who we are. I don't carry hate towards them. I don't. I never did, even back then, I started to think for whatever reason that I felt like it wasn't just, it was a little bit for me to basically let him know that I have forgiven him. And I remember I spoke to my brother about it, and he was like, I forgive him too. Okay. I don't have time to, write letters and care to reach out or talk to anyone, but I thought it was important maybe to let him know that. When he did call me, I remember him just, I accepted the call, and he just like, it was almost like natural, like somebody I've been knowing for a long time, and I remember he told me, he said, I've been praying to God, for so long to send me a message and to give me a sign that I was, forgiven and that I was on the right path, and you answered that prayer. So I thought that was, it was a little emotional, the fact that when you think about something spiritual like that, he's been praying for, an answer, a message from, sending you this message is God.
Yeah,
I felt like,
like you was the
it,
messenger.
yeah, I was a messenger, and I know that for many people believe that stuff like this isn't like can't be true. And I'm telling you, in real life, right, in 2025, and on a YouTube stream, that you know things like this exist. Yeah. So we were able to like talk about a lot of things. He got his PhD in Bible and theology, I guess, in Bible studies,
Uh-huh.
and he became a certified
Yeah, it said doctor of ministry in the article. I said, what the
doctor
fuck
of
is that?
ministry. Yeah. So he got his doctorate. So that's amazing. You get me? You know. Um. And again, right? Many people say that I shouldn't be putting myself in that situation. It's like, again, I'm not trying to sway the court into like vouching for me, or like I don't think the court would even care about what I have to say. I was just trying to be an example of how people could change their life, even for someone like me.
Right.
I think that it's two different worlds, right? Like, meaning two different worlds, but we're both deep entrenched in those mentalities.
Right.
And yeah, I'm getting a lot of those like backlash, and them commentaries of how stupid I am and this and that. But you know what? I always, I never cared what people thought. I always like did things with my with my heart, and I believe that God made me who I am internally, as well, and that's what I felt like I was the right thing to do, and I did it, and I feel confident about that.
Margarito J. Flores Jr. tells the Sun-Times he and his brother Pedro Flores, who helped bring down Shinola cartel kingpin El Pocha, back Saul Rodriguez's bid to be released early from prison, even though Rodriguez abducted his brother in 2003. Now I'm gonna stop right there and ask you, because they threw P's name in there, but there's no quotes, there's no letter, there's no nothing. Was this a
Mm.
Jay Flores thing? This and the way they framed it, it seems like what you're saying. You're saying, I'm not trying to sway no court, but they're making it seem that way. You back Saul Rodriguez's bid, but they put it on both of y'all. Is this a Jay thing or is this a Twins thing?
The letter and the backing. I mean, the letter was a J thing. P forgiving him is both of our things.
Okay.
My brother felt like he felt like, look, I forgave a long time ago. Okay, my life isn't. I don't have the luxury to work on that right now. I
Right.
forgive him, and much. Good luck to him and his family, and
Okay.
and he didn't feel like it's important enough. Um.
Cool. I just wanted to make that clear, and I'm
Yeah.
sure P will speak for himself when the time comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it felt funny to me that they would do that, and then there was nothing else in there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Again, that's some media shit. In an emailed response to questions from the Chicago Sun-Times, Flores expanded on his thoughts about life after prison, saying, "Now, before I read that quote, you didn't think this would go public until they reached out to you?"
Well, Saul actually reached out to me and let me know that they didn't want to seal it, or they were not going to seal it, or the court didn't want to grant him the a sealed motion or something like that.
Okay.
And once he said that, I kind of knew it was going to happen. But from my understanding, it was like released a couple, like it was on Pacer or something on the docket a couple of days ago, and the only person that picked it up was the Chicago Sun
Damn
Times.
it,
So
man! I got a Pacer account now, man. I could have had that shit first. So boom. So you had an inkling that it wouldn't be closed, and then they reached out to you.
yeah, meaning I wasn't thinking about that when I wrote the letter and
Of
stuff.
course.
Like, so, like when he asked, like, man, it'd be great if you could write a letter for me.
Mm.
I I felt like it wasn't gonna take nothing away from me. I don't
Right.
know how is it gonna affect me today, because people are like, oh, it's making you look like you're just like supporting criminals and murderers and and stuff like that. And I think that's unfair, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Fair to say I would leave it up to the courts, right, to make the best decision possible. But why
Mm-hmm.
don't they say that about Llewellyn? You get me? Who was
I
released,
absolutely
and
agree.
you know what I mean, and others, I mean, come on, we could talk about this, forever. Larry Hoover got a pardon from Donald Trump.
The disingenuousness of it, because here's the thing: they'll send somebody to serve their time, and I'm probably guilty of this too. They'll send somebody to do their time. They'll do all their time. They'll come out and be like, "Well, that person, you're supporting unalivers," and then, "Well, you're supporting a person that served their sentence already."
Yeah, that's I think the biggest thing with me as well, because like, oh, you hurt people. I get it all the time. You hurt people. I'm like, what? Doesn't I mean I served my full sentence already. Doesn't that count? And the same laws are
Mm-hmm.
convict are the same laws that let me free.
Right.
Mm. And when we talk about something morally, I think that that's what kind of inspired me to do it, because morally, Chai, I always say this to everyone. Like, I show the whole world knows my sins. Show me yours. I think that that's the moral of the thing. It's like, and it's weird because I felt this connection, especially on Easter, and because I do believe in my faith. I know it's gonna sound weird to people, but I let the Bible and I let God's word talk to me, on a personal level, and I could relate because here's Sal, right? As in as in the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, who was the biggest, one of the most important pillars of Christianity, who
Mm-hmm.
was Paul, who basically was a murderer, who was he persecuted Christians, killed thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then he died, pushing the gospel. And guess where he spread the gospel at, Shy?
Where?
In prison.
Mm.
And I think that, going back to, my own Sal, right?
Right.
You know, I felt like, I felt that connection where I felt like, I started thinking about him a lot, and I felt like I believe that everything happens for a reason. I don't believe I have the power to set someone free. I believe that's, God's will and the court's will, right?
Flores says he is not in federal witness protection. In fact, I travel the country working side by side with law enforcement as a consultant and educator, he says. Did the Sun Times blow that up and make
I
that
feel
bigger
like
than what it
I feel
was?
like they did. I feel like he asked if I was in the program, and I said I wasn't, but I feel like he was making it seem like, you know,
Hmm.
like I think he took it a little bit far, and I always say I'm still a protected witness. I
Right.
don't think the government's gonna appreciate that he said it like that,
Right.
you know. And I feel like I don't know. I feel like he kind of said that as a public, service announcement
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
go get up,
Yeah, yeah.
or something. But again, right? It's like it's what we've been talking about the clickbait of the media, and how they, consider themselves to be professional, but then what they're willing to do to sell a story.
All these YouTubers ain't they no different.
I want to tell you something. When I said about accountability and stuff like that, what I was basically saying is that if I would not have been involved in a criminal world,
Mm-hmm.
doing criminal stuff, I would never, bump heads with Saul.
Mm. I believe I could involve Mr. Rodriguez in some of the programs I lead, where his testimony and life experience could be a powerful tool to inspire and deter others. My thought is I'd like to talk to a kid who made the decision to not go the way of that life because of something he heard from an OG. We don't hear enough of that part. You know,
Yeah,
we hear it.
I feel like I've heard a few stories, but not no one that really gives it credit.
Yeah, I'd really like to hear some of those stories
That
because
that's a good one. That's a good one to reach out to people. Like, did an OG change your perspective? Did a movie change your perspective?
right, what
You
changed
know?
your perspective? Let's
Uh,
dial that in and figure out what the fuck that was. What did you believe? Did you believe the OG that's talking his shit from experience, or did you believe the song that told you, this is for the birds?
especially today, Shire. Maybe one day your videos, and these conversations will lead to that. In me saying that this is what I felt, and I think I mentioned it not so long ago with Enrique, right, with Boxer, is that people always looked at me and my brother, oh, you're the soft ones, right? You ain't street like that. And it's funny because when I tell some of the guys I recently, they laugh about it,
Mm-hmm.
that people be like, oh, you were soft, you were in about that life. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll bring you somebody who was really about that life, even though you're gonna hate on them, because they're gonna say that Saul broke every street rule, every street code, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can never make the street happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
somebody who was too street. You want to claim a murderer, there he is. You want to claim someone who made money off of that, there he is. Right? Will make the excuses. Oh, but he did this, but he did that, and you know how it is. I don't care where you're at. The street has no rules. It's get it how you can.
We
Until you see someone getting it and you start criticizing it. So
right.
I felt like okay, how about I got a better one? I know me. How about I bring you someone who was everything that the street says that someone should look like? Let's see what he feels about it. And we know that he basically broke down, and got emotional at court and said he didn't want to do bad. And we know all his backstory, and we know he was a successful criminal, successful stick-up man, successful, whatever you want to call it, murderer,
He was a
homicide
professional
maniac,
informant as well.
professional informant as well. Remember, everything goes. When someone feels like I ain't scared of you or I don't respect any rules, why would you think he would respect the street code? And then I thought, well, it'd be great to kind of show the other side of it. And when speaking about that, I thought he was a great example, someone who knew both sides of it, who had studied my brother and I, who was involved in different things. And I felt like who better than to be able to tell some of these young kids, how many regrets he had, especially when he's talking about God.
We were talking about a video, his plea bargain happening sometime next week, and he said, "Do you think that, I don't know if it was him or Robert, do you think that kids seeing or people seeing all of these people snitching on each other is going to deter them?" And my thought was, it's going to take more than that to deter them, because people are poor and people need shit. And now it seems to come with an automatic, in case of emergency, break glass.
You know what? I thought about that. That's a good question, but that's kind of the scary part now. And all these, I think that all these young adults are thinking, shit, if they did it, I could do it too then. And it's going to encourage them. Like, remember, as I was looking at a video, right? Because I know I'm going to tell you something. I know them personally, okay? They ain't about that life. It's real easy to hide behind a house somewhere, hiding yourself and tell people to kill. That's easy, bro. Anyone could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about him, and I said, here he is, right? How many people did we say we counted last time died in both times? I think over 100 people died trying to save his ass. And then he cuts a deal, or whatever the case is, and that's that. But I do believe that people are going to feel like, oh, you know what? It's only going to kind of say, like, I could do all this damage, and cooperate. So I do believe that I'm one of those persons as well, right? But I do believe that it's only going to make the government start to think twice on how lenient, cooperators are going to, what type of leniency they're going to have.
Do you feel like weight lifted from your shoulders after writing to him, or what you feel after writing that?
I want to tell you something. I feel like in those moments, I feel like I had a heavy heart. I don't know about weight on my shoulders. And I'm going to tell you something. I have to confess something. I would be lying to you if it wasn't self-serving, because this worries me too. And I talked to God about this, is that it felt good. It felt good being the bigger person. It felt good doing good, Chai. Does that make sense? It felt good doing the right thing. And maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe, it felt good having him say, man, brother, like, damn, I'm sorry. You get me? Like, it felt good for him to be in shock, feel grateful that I was on the other line. That's something I really, like, I've been thinking a lot about, because I don't want to fall into the footsteps where everything is like more of a self-serving thing, and more of a, like, it's making me feel good, so why not do it? But when I initially did it, it was from my heart. I don't feel like, oh, something was weighing on me, like on my shoulders. I felt like I had forgiven him. I felt at peace at that. But for whatever those moments were, I felt like it was heavy on my heart for me to take the time to write a letter, to go get stamps, to put it, and I didn't send it from where I lived, I had to make sure he received it from a different, postal address.
We posed the conversation earlier where sometimes we'll say, I'm forgiving somebody, but I'm forgiving them for me, not for them. You did the double up. You forgave him for you, and you forgave him for him, and you wrote the letter that he asked for.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to say is that when you forgive somebody, you forgive them for yourself. I don't want that to go away. I believe in this. Especially me and my wife talked about that just yesterday. That you forgive somebody, you do it for yourself, so that you could feel free from your trauma or whatever that issue caused. But I already had forgiven him. I
Mm.
didn't feel no hate towards him because trust me, if I didn't forgive him and I was resentful, we'd be visiting him,
If
in
there
a
was a body
cemetery.
to hide, it was his.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We'd be visiting him in a cemetery, talking about him in past
You know
tense,
what I mean? That's my thing is if there was one body to hide, it would have been that motherfucker, man.
So I'm gonna tell you, I even heard it from everyone. They're like, "Why didn't you do it?"
Hmm.
Seriously, real facts, real facts. Like even people from the professional world,
Hmm.
like that was some, and again, if I was like everyone else, then I'd be everyone else.
It's
People are like, it's weird because I used to preach this in prison. I am not gonna go into detail. I used to preach this in prison all the time, where people will be like, say that they stand on, that they're this person, and if you ask someone, who are you, they'll describe themselves, right? I'm this way, I'm this way, I'm this way, but yet they'll go away from that for the smallest, stupidest things,
quickly.
quick. Like you say that you're a man, but you will be bitch quick, for a honey bun. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
You know,
Watch your
you know
mouth. You're
what?
not talking about me, y'all. Huh? Fuck a honey
No,
bun.
why would I be talking about you? No, but what I'm trying to say is like they'll be like stand on shit and be like, "Well, I did it because he did it," and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
He did some bitch shit, so you decided to do bitch shit too. Or like that's weird, bro. No, no, real talks. Cause we used to have these little like I guess courts,
Mm.
where we like talk about things, and we'll be like, so let me get this straight. Someone just did some bitch shit, right? So you decided to do the same thing because someone else did some bitch shit, so you decided to do bitch shit too. So what does that make you?
Llewellyn got a compassionate release under the First Step Act because he said he was at risk of contracting the coronita. Prosecutors had opposed the crooked cop's release, saying he had been the CEO and guardian angel of the crew. But Judge Gotcha, she didn't get shit, said he rehabilitated himself personally and spiritually.
I,
That judge is full of shit. I think that judge shouldn't even be a judge, bro.
well, let me tell you something. Well, we'll see what happens with Saul. But you said you got Pacer, so you should. It'd be fun to go and see what he wrote to the judge.
What Llewellyn wrote
Yeah,
on who on what on
and his
Sa-
compassionate release. If you
on,
go back to
on his
2020.
own, or on Saul's? You think he wrote a letter for Saul?
Oh, absolutely not. Saul testified against him. But what I'm saying is that when he had to write a letter for compassionate release back in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
it should be on the docket.
All right,
So if you look him up,
I'm gonna try to find that.
we just to see what he said,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're gonna say the system is just not like right, but Llewellyn got released, and I'm gonna tell you something. If it wasn't for Llewellyn, Saul would never have become who he became.
Without Llewellyn, Saul would never have become what he became.
Yep.
Right, he gave him a backbone.
People be thinking it's sweet like that, and I'm like, man, he had a badge, literally. He had
Yeah.
a few badges,
No, no, no. They was they weren't just in cahoots. They was
It's because
canoodling.
Shy. I mean, I don't think we have never talked about. I don't know if we ever get that chance. We have never talked about the inside stuff.
Cause you be holding out. You be taking that shit to
No, what I'm
fucking
saying, what
ironclad and shit.
people think like, look. So Saul was out there in the street just like we were. Of course, he was hiding, but he had a badge. He had a few badges on him, like he wasn't stupid on what he was
Let me ask you
doing.
something. Pre police protection. Was he a run up on his own type of motherfucker with the hammer, snatch a motherfucker himself type of motherfucker, or what kind of motherfucker was he before he had that police protection?
I kid you not. I don't know him. He's older than me. I don't know him like that.
Okay.
One thing he figured out was game. Okay, and I believe that money controls people as well. You get me? He just used that for his advantage. I don't know him like that.
Okay.
And that was one of my biggest things when we were in the street. It would be like when people would tell me about him, like where, how, you get me? Who, how you gonna, even before this happened. You're gonna be in the street like that. You're gonna have some type of resume.
So Llewellyn was his unicorn, where he had a weapon. He had a weapon that was superior in this cop. And you're saying he wouldn't have rose to the stature that he rose as far as hitting what he hit without Llewellyn. And Llewellyn's
Absolutely
home.
not.
He's
Come
free.
on. Yeah, he's been free for 5 years.
Crazy. All right. As I was reading that article, JP said that don't sit right with me. Hold on, I play this Undertaker. That don't sit right with me. I know it ain't my life, but I know they're plugged with the government. And Saul didn't just get at them, but so many people he hurt where he was crying like a punk at funerals.
Um, yeah, he did some real bad stuff, and it's funny that they say that. I do think that the government's gonna be more mad at me that I did that than anything, or maybe they won't. Maybe they just think I'm a dumbass, as I know that they think. But I don't know if they think I'm gonna be able to sway the court in any way.
Yeah, I told him how much sway you think he got with the government. The government, if you had sway with the government, your wives wouldn't have gone through what they went through.
Yeah, no, the swaying the government is one thing, but swaying the courts is another thing.
Les said, I mean, how much different is it compared to what the twins were doing, JP? Again, Velez is like you in the sense that he don't put a grade to the shit. I felt like it was different. It was worse. Dude was more hands-on. Dude was, snatch your kid up, snatch your old lady up, snatch, you know what I'm saying?
I think that comes from
the streets,
like from a street perspective. But when you look at it like from a moral perspective and stuff like that, or criminality perspective, it's like we like to have a scale and a measuring stick, right? But and then we will go do something else that will kind of like make us even worse. And I always, to me, if you're anything to religion, right? It always says, right? So you who cast the first stone, right? Or what does it say about the sty in your eye? Will be a log in someone else's, right? It all depends, and I think that I will let God be the judgment of that,
And JP's response was, Saul is a true monster. He'd work with the dirty cop and snatch rug dealers for their rugs, money, or both. But he'd allegedly do it to his friends as well, and he even had the audacity to show up to funerals crying his eyes out. Then when he got caught and was asking the judge for leniency, the family testified that the way he was crying in court was the way he was crying at funerals. On some Bishop from Jew shit, on some Alpo shit, on some all kind of motherfuckers. There's plenty of motherfuckers that do that.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I know some of those bigger gangsters that everyone's always glorifying. They glorify American ones too, not just Mexican ones. They glorify that went and did the same thing at funerals. So in that way, yeah, I'm going to tell you, to me, it's like, damn, like it's harsh, like. How about this? Let's go back to some of the things he's done. He's the same person that stole 300 kilos from the Sinaloa cartel, and then they hired him to find out who stole the kilos, and he went and he killed someone innocent, and that the guy confessed to stealing the kilos.
Wait, what?
A big lieutenant was giving this individual I knew. The lieutenant sent 300 kilos, and I guess through oversharing information, Saul got the gist of it, and they probably seen him a couple of times, and he got into plan into place and found out where the keys were, went and stole them, and then that lieutenant called his distributor that was Saul's connect and said, hey, I want you to find out who stole the keys. So that distributor hired Saul to find out who stole the drugs.
Type of motherfucker that'll steal some shit in your house and help you look for it. Go ahead.
And then Saul went and looked for the person, supposedly, and said, who do you think it was? And they told him who they thought it was. He went and grabbed that person, tied him up, tortured him, made him confess to stealing the 300K.
Different kind of motherfucker right there.
So that's what he did.
That's one of the things he did. For him to be the friend that you have with money, and then you end up snatched, and then you be the friend with money, you get snatched, you call him to rescue you, then he charge you a vig for the next 20 years. A lot of balls on that one, boy. Did it to an old lady with a bar. We covered a whole bunch of that shit. And it makes me say to myself, boy, is Jesus a safety valve sometimes?
Yeah. So I mean, again, right? I guess we, what we're willing to do and what extent we're willing to do to cover our asses.
Right. So he's done some shit. My thing is, does he acknowledge that, or is he just?
No, 100% he knows that. But let me tell you something, Shine. Let's talk about something, okay? You're gonna agree with this, all right? How many people have done so much shit that they'll never get caught for doing, and went to prison, came out? How many people? You get me? Will be the worst of the worst and do a little bit of time for someone else, and then come out back in the street and then live a normal life like nothing happened.
Yeah, I mean they had to make a decision to not do that shit no more.
But does that make it that right? It felt good doing my good deed, and what I felt was the honorable thing to do. Not because, again, right? We don't know the future. People are like, oh, you're gonna, if he kidnap someone else,
Hmm.
if he does someone, that's on you. No, it's not.
We were talking about the day that I believe Saul came into the chat. And what I was talking about was he came into the chat, and when I realized who he might be, he said something to the effect of the forgotten prisoner, right? He said it in Spanish. And then that's when I asked, I was like, man, I wonder if that's. They said I asked, I didn't remember. They said I asked, and then he bounced. Maybe he bounced before I asked. Maybe that was his last words and left. And I thought to myself, you kind of sound like you took what the shit that you are or how you was towards people for granted, and you feel like you're owed something, like you're forgotten. Who do you want to remember you if you did shit like what you did to the people around you?
I think that I'm gonna just believe that in his perspective, being in the street, he was doing the street life. You get me?
Mm,
Just like we could justify, boosting, stealing, drug trafficking, whatever, prostitution. You get me?
mm,
I think that that's what that could be his mindset.
mm. And well, evidently he feels forgotten by somebody. I don't think I'd put my hands in the fire for someone that snatched a family member of mine.
He did not just like. Don't forget, he kidnapped my brother. He also kidnapped two of my workers, and in total, he got me for over 10 mil.
I'd have charged
Um,
his ass for the letter. I'd have been like 5 million for the letter, motherfucker. You want a letter? 5 million.
okay, in the different perspective, just imagine, like, if I don't know if he ever thinks about that or he ever will, just to think about either if he just say you know, if he's manipulating all of us or he's really like
I didn't hear
conning
what you
all of
just
us.
said. You moved, and we didn't hear what you just said.
Okay, what if just imagine he's conning all of us or manipulating all of us? Just say, right?
Mm-hmm.
More me or whatever, because you're gonna say not me.
They're not me, motherfucker.
Um,
But go ahead.
what do you think he thinks? Either he thinks I'm a real idiot, or he really thinks that I'm showing what really good people and
No,
what
we made that.
people are
We
faith.
we made that comparison. We made it clear that dude is a conniver, but you guys are no dummies. You know what I'm saying? And it's gonna take a whole lot to pull the wool over your eyes. We made that clear. Upper echelon, you're a man. You make your own decisions. You stand on your morals and principles. I understand forgiving like we were forgiven, but forgiving is one thing. But his actions, coño, JP on his ass. Velez said, who wrote the article, Mico Trevino or Chaparro, Luis Chaparro? There was more talk back here. Even Zoraida said it. Zoraida admire the way you guys move because she knows. I said myself, I'm not capable of that shit.
People who are I cooperate against, they've reached out even to you,
Mm.
Shy, and we talked about some of these individuals later on. We'll talk a little bit more about it. Now, this happens like over a year ago. There's all this stuff that's barely coming to light. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm so glad that that happened because, man, I had reunited with some people who I had cooperated against, and man, it's been nothing but love,
Mm.
Shy. And what does that tell you? You get me? Like 95% of the people that were involved some way somehow, they've all matured, grew up, and we're good. You know what I'm saying? And what does that say about us, or what does that say about them? It's just insane. Just to think about that. Shy. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on those two. I know we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, you're talking about people reaching out to you and being forgiving, and
Yeah,
and,
and
and
reaching out to you too.
well, they definitely reach out to me. They don't know how to get in contact with you. They get in contact through the YouTube emails. They get in contact through the social media networks. You're looking at the irony between the two, that you forgave a man and you've been forgiven and forgave each other. I see what I always see. Yes, there are moments like that. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there that don't want to reach out to you, that probably resents you or for whatever reasons they have. And sometimes it's a passive aggressive thing where it comes off and it starts off aggressive and then it's like, it's the old homie. What's up? Yeah, I know shit was fucked up, shit went left.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes the things with one thing that people can't deny is like my track record for me and my brother. Our track record, right? 100%, bro, was always good. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna tell you, we start measuring, or have a scale between our bad and our, no matter what they are and our good, they're gonna be on the opposite side of the scale. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
And but also goes like I can't give myself that credit. I always say that the people that we were around at the end of the day were 99% of them were really good people, you know?
Right. Right. And I also look at it like it's the same thing in the hood though. It don't matter that y'all all either in jail, out of jail, or 20 years older or whatever. In the hood, motherfuckers double cross each other on a regular basis, and then they're at each other's baby showers next week.
Man, I seen that shit so many times. Even when you talk about even being in prison, sometimes you like I know a lot of individuals like I would be around people who are like folks and peoples, right? Straight have bodies against each other's gang, and then we would eat and celebrate each other. Motherfucker would go and cook, you know, birthday dinners for each other, like you know what I mean?
It's a
Because guess what?
disingenuous game. It's a poisonous programming.
So I want to speak about that. So what makes it different? So imagine I've been in the, like firsthand, you know, and I'll bring these people back on here. I seen, you know, folks with peoples, you know, and I seen like one dude who was in St. Jude's had two bodies. All the dudes, you know, were in our car were like Lion Kings with bodies. You get me? One, two, three bodies on them, and guess what? When we were there, they loved each other. They cook for each other. They look out for each other. You know what I'm saying, bro? What is that? Think about that. So just think about when just in talking about those things, right? It's almost stupid because and then we expect people to like hate each other, you know, like especially today in social media, all these young stupid thugs. You get me? They have not experienced anything, and once they experience it, it's like
I tell you what can change some minds, the ones that ain't looking for the adrenaline rush, that they more when something real close to the end of your life happens, that changes a lot of lives.
shit for
So,
real.
but sometimes they're not that lucky. Sometimes that
They're
first
not that
time is the
lucky.
last time.
Yeah, that person can't say it. And it's crazy because recently one of these persons that I was able to speak to, he told me that a lot of people don't understand why he still had love, for us under the circumstances. You get me?
Hmm.
And he's like, and I'll tell him all the time, like, man, they don't understand. Then he said something to me. He said, I never felt, he said that he didn't like the idea of this black mafia family, because he said, man, they don't even get it. That he said, but I never felt the love I felt, like I never had that love, that I felt with, being part of the team. You get me?
Hmm.
Because I understood the stakes of it,
Hmm.
and you guys never like you never failed me. It's a little bit like one of those stories where it's like at the end of the day, nothing else is more important. All those things don't matter because you know what's going to be important at the end of the day is life.
Yeah, yeah, we argue about the stupidest shit, man. Listen, I since this Diddy trial and my thoughts on it, I've put them out there, and people be like, "Oh, the video, he beat her in the video." Y'all are more worked up about that video than she was. She wanted that video suppressed and hidden. You guys got to stop caring about shit for more than what the people cared about it themselves. You worried about snitch, 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 snitch. These fools ain't even snitch on you.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's true though. It's like we
Meanwhile,
start getting caught
the
up.
dudes that they did talk on, they understand what went down and how it went down. So
I,
why are we even
I,
having this argument?
Yeah, and Shai, you have a like one day you'll be able to tell that story because you have a first a first hand first view and perspective and you see it yourself. You get me?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
I
think
gotta write
early
a
on
book about this bullshit, man.
when you started this shit, I think I believe you. Let's go back to when you started this, right? You had your own feelings, whatever, and then I do sometimes wonder like, what do you think about it? What do you think if I tell you? Even if I had told you back then, it's not even like that. You get me? My guys are gonna be my guys, and then it's easier said than done. Then you hear for your own, right? You see it on your own.
What do you mean? So
Like
you took he took that explanation and mangled the fuck out of that shit, bro. Start over, start from
what I'm
scratch.
saying, going back to us
To when I
talk,
started,
to when you started and talk about the story and talking about snitching, talking about this, and I think that we already went over the whole Sinaloa cartel or
hmm.
cartel members snitching
Oh,
each
you're
other,
saying
and,
you
and
were trying to explain to me the perspective, but now I get to see it.
you get to see it firsthand when
Yeah,
you done yourself spoke to people,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
and you know inside information of people being like, yeah, people who I cooperate against who said I don't care. So
While
imagine that.
everybody else is arguing for them.
Yeah, for everyone else is arguing for them, and they're like, "Yo, I don't care." I'm gonna tell you something. In Mexico, the biggest thing I feel that has been, I just heard a story of La Barbie, okay, who was one of the biggest cooperators, and how much pull he had in prison, first-hand experience, okay,
Of
and
who?
how all these La Barbie, and how he had it locked down and this and that, right? And how he had all the bites on card and this and that and all kinds of stuff, right? And no one cared that he snitched.
Mm.
You think I'm a snitch? I imagine him. And this is someone who gave his life to Christ. You get me? People would talk about, right this, right that, and he's living like a king in prison. It's just so ironic the way it is.
But isn't what Saul did more personal?
Like I said before, I think if I wasn't in that world, you know what I'm saying, I'd have a different, answer to that. But I understand the reasons, right? The reason was money. You know what I'm saying? Get
Right,
it by
right,
any
right. It
means,
wasn't
right?
like it wasn't betrayal. He couldn't betray you. He wasn't one of your guys.
Yeah. So isn't it get it by any means?
Mm.
Isn't that the first rule in the streets?
Yeah.
Get it by any means, right? I can't be mad at that. That's part of the game. As a matter of fact, I told him that when the first time we talked. You got me. You won. You got me. I can't be mad at you. You caught me slipping. And don't forget, also, what I'm gonna point out something wrong on my own, and I let him know that too. That I did something too selfish, Shy. When it was time for me to get my get back, I got my get back
Get back on
in
who?
in a different way. In Saul,
Oh, you left him a gift.
no, I'm saying I'm the one that me and my brother are the ones that set up the operation to that got him arrested in the first place.
But the alternative was what? He wanted to try to come snatch Val or some shit. No.
Her family. So it's a little bit like one of those situations where it's like, we could start, dissecting, every little part of it. I'm gonna tell you something, but what's the difference between me saying all those things and then me doing business and saying, oh, Miles Zambada was really, he was good people, he treated me with nothing but love and respect. What's the difference? And if we measure his fucking crimes, oh, we'll be here forever. Let's think about it. I think you're the person that will probably the person that will really, really call that out. It's like, it's weird because people don't really think about it. Like, we can talk about Saul and we'll be like, oh my God, Saul. And then people want to hear me say a story about Mayo, and I start talking to you how we, had dinner and how he did this and how he said this joke. We'd be like in awe or whatever. And what about him? And I think that people, we forget and we start to kind of like pick and choose, because someone has a name or someone,
By the moment. By the moment.
yeah, So like, let's be honest. If we were to do a live, and we were to say, I got some news to tell you about Miles Zambada, exclusive, right? People would tune in, and they'd be all in awe.
Without consideration for all of the personal things he did to people and all of his
Yeah,
crimes.
and honestly, if there is a scale, shit, we scale him and we put him in a scale with Saul. Shit, Saul's an angel.
He's the church boy that he is right now. He's the doctor.
I mean, we're only talking about this because it's been part of the life, and like you keep saying that life is stranger than fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just continues to be that thing. And I hope that I could inspire others to learn to forgive, and learn to just find peace within themselves, and it's not good to live with hate, and hate doesn't do anything but just create more hate.
If people are making decisions for you, they would have preferred you be indifferent. You ain't gotta hate them. You ain't gotta love them. And again, you didn't go too far out your way. You wrote a letter. You did what you was gonna do.
I understand that. I think that I started to realize this, and this is something I told my wife too. I told her, I was like, you know what? I can't go against me. It hasn't failed me yet. Even when I started working in law enforcement, you know how much pushback I get because of that? On both sides? Oh, Jay's a real snitch, Jay's a real police, And then on the other side, they'd be like, yeah, right, him being that, there's no way, and stuff like that.
Let me ask you, when this story dropped, so you already knew it was coming, they reached out to you. So you started getting the feedback today instantaneously?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate the time, man. And blessings to everyone in the chat for all your blessings, for your well wishes on the family and on Val. I can't wait for her to join us, soon. And man, stay positive, stay safe, especially back at home and Shy, man. With all this gun violence and everything, man, that's going on. Please, man, have a great 4th of July. Have a safe one. If you don't have to go out, man, hopefully you guys can enjoy it with family and just have a good time and be at peace,
Amen to that. Last night, Chicago, Record release party for a local female MC. 18 people shot, 4 unalive in downtown Chicago.
It's tragic. It's tragic because they're doing it for nothing. Okay, Shaq? They're doing it for nothing. You know.
My brother said something that I always repeat. My brother said, all you got to do to die in Chicago is have potential.
Potential, have a nice car, a nice watch, or be at the wrong place at the wrong time because these dudes are doing it for fun.
Yeah.
And it's sad, you know.
Sad.
And man, my condolences to all those people who passed for gun violence, for all this nonsense violence, and I pray for everyone to stay safe and
Creativity kills hate.